Fantasy art history with Abelard and Joe.
Abelard said he would be here any second now. He's getting something ready. Oh, there. I'm sorry. Make.
Ah,
Oh, here he comes now.
ah la la.
Oh, he's
Ah,
not coming.
hallucination. Dared he glance back? He turned his fever-addled head. Yes, it was true this time. There was something behind him. Far away on the slope below, something black and nebulous that seemed to pad on stealthy feet. With a muttered curse, Stugach began to run. Why had he ever touched that image? If he got out of this, he would never return to the accursed spot again. The legends were true. God of the desert, he ran on, even though the sun showered bloody kisses on his brow. He was beginning to go blind. There were dazzling constellations whirling before his eyes, and his heart throbbed a shrieking rhythm in his breast. But in his mind there was room for but one thought: escape. His imagination began playing him strange tricks. He seemed to see statues in the sand, statues like the one he had profaned. Their shapes towered everywhere, writhing giant-like out of the ground and confronting his path with eerie menace. Some were in attitudes with wings outspread, others were tentacled and snake-like, but all were faceless and triple-crowned. He felt that he was going mad until he glanced back and saw that creeping figure now only a half-mile behind. Then he staggered on, screaming incoherently at the grotesque eidolons barring his way. The desert seemed to take on a hideous personality,
Well, wait.
as though
Hang
all
on.
nature were conspiring to conquer him.
What's an
The
eidolon?
contorted out an eidolon is like it's the same root as idol. It means image in Greek.
Oh, that's so appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay,
And you
go
see all
go.
this stuff. Well, no, it's fine. I think we're done.
Okay. That's good because I was getting. It was a little creepy.
I'm getting it's a little scary, right? Well, that's a
Um.
story from Robert Bloch called God of the Desert. And that story was notably illustrated by our subject today, Virgil Finlay,
Oh, cool.
and H.P. Lovecraft was so blown away by the illustration that he wrote a little poem about how good it was.
And how was the poem very good?
Have not read the poem.
It's probably not very
Would prefer
good.
not to read too much of the writing of H.P. Lovecraft.
That's totally understandable.
Maybe if
Um,
I couldn't get to sleep sometime, I would I would pick up the old Dunwich Horror again.
yeah, that story was great though, except for the word I didn't understand. Um, and so that story was illustrated by the artist that we're looking at today, a master illustrator who worked in pulp magazines in the was it like 30s and 40s?
Yep, sort of golden age of pulp illustration.
Yeah, so get ready for this. It's wow, it's really different from what we looked at last time.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna go get it.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Ah,
Yeah, this is great because what we've got here is pulp magazine illustration, which is something that has very different objectives than like book illustration. Just look at this crazy, crazy, crazy example.
yeah, this is really something. I don't know what I'm looking at when I look at this image, but it seems kind of sexual. Uh, and I don't
Well,
know.
maybe for some people.
Hey, I don't know why I say that. Maybe it's all of the goo.
It is very gooey, and there are a lot of things that you could characterize as phallic if you wanted to.
Yes, and there are a lot of things that seem to be touching each other in a soft, bodily way.
It's also very slimy.
It's also very slimy, and I think this. Uh, I here's what I think. I think that there is a element that it's possible for there to be an element of kind of like withdraw or disgust attached to sex because it's vulnerable and art like this is playing off of that fear because bodies are weird, gross, and hard to understand,
Yeah.
and it feels sometimes very, very scary to get close to them, no matter who you are, I think. And this kind of taps into that universal fear.
Yeah. It's not because so it's hard to talk about this without talking about the sort of weird fiction tradition that Finley's illustrating here, and in particular Lovecraft. And this one is very bodily. Some other ones we're going to see are more like ethereal, but the idea of there being a bunch of mushrooms and tentacles and stuff, and then it being your job. This is the thing. I have never been scared by an illustration of Cthulhu,
Mm-mm.
because it's just a big guy. But if I look at something like this, I can start to pick up a sense of actual alienness.
Yeah, there's no figure here.
Yeah,
It's all smushed together. And I think that's part of what makes it one of the things that makes it off-putting is that we can't figure out what we're supposed to be looking at. Although
yeah,
compositionally, there are a lot of shapes that lead your eye around. It never resolves into actual forms. You can't tell where one thing ends and another thing begins.
yeah.
It's mesmerizing and hypnotic.
Yeah, things do not resolve. There's just enough that you can begin to resolve like foreground, background a little bit, although the foreground and background lead into one another. You can begin to say like I think this shape is a different thing from this other shape, but everything is like melding into and growing out of one another. Um,
And this is scary because we all think of ourselves as distinct individuals that
yeah,
are unable to ooze into one another. And the idea of having that happen is deeply frightening. Uh, there are different textures that you can look at here too. And I think that those are being used really skillfully, both to create space, like to move certain elements behind other elements of this drawing, but also like textures are gross.
yeah,
They can be really. Here's what I think about textures. If you look at the sort of popular airbrushed drawing styles that you might see in, say, like a modern comic book or like an anime or whatever.
yeah,
Everything is kind of like smooth, made out of plastic.
yeah,
It's not none of that stuff. Even if it bleeds, it doesn't look like blood. It looks like kind of a airy sort of bit of light or whatever.
yeah.
This is all textures, and the hard, scary parts about life are also all about textures, in my opinion. Maybe that's just is that just me?
No, I think that's a arguably very meaningful thing to say.
Uh, this is a very physical drawing.
Yeah. But to move on to one that's less physical but equally unsettling, because this one is kind of what if flesh was scary, but this one is more like what if there was just some scary light and monsters and cubes.
Yeah. So I didn't I found these drawings
Yeah.
and I didn't really look up what stories they're from. Some of them might be from Lovecraft stories. I admit that I did not research this dude at all.
But to that point, if you want to leaf through these, almost all of them are available on Internet Archive and well worth a look.
Yeah. So we're gonna just be talking about this from the perspective of like the drawing itself, which I think is interesting on its own. Um, wow, that's a lot of beautiful line work.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's so nuts.
If you're talking about texture, this whole thing is organized around this like psychedelic texture of like pulsating light coming from what that thing that I kind of think is a window.
That's the word pulsating is so good here too because you can see like these clouds that are kind of coming towards you, and it really does have a sense of movement just in the light itself, which is I don't know, like how do you do that? It's so great. Um, One thing that is good to pick out about this is that even though this is an overwhelming amount of just like line work and information, the thing that you're looking at is very clear. Even though we are looking at like there's one human figure way in the back behind the sort of window or bars, and everything else is just weird shapes. There's no difficulty in making out one form from another. They're all really clearly defined.
Yeah.
And that's super impressive because it's not like I'm looking at a person and I know what a person looks like or a tree and I know what a tree looks like. This is just stuff. But I can tell where they all are in relationship to each other. The flat black shapes, the circle, the diamond, that are kind of places where like no line work has been done and you rest your eye there and they just serve to kind of separate. the parts of the drawing from each other. So like look at how you have three or four black circles total,
Yeah.
and they are moving back in space. So you've got the in the lower left, and at the very bottom you have pretty big ones, and then you have a smaller one a little bit farther back, and then quite far in the back, presumably because they're the same shape, you've got an even smaller one. And that is how you create depth in a piece like this where there's almost no other real world sort of signifiers of how big things are.
Yeah, if you were to imagine the circles as like points on a plane, then the plane would extend into the vanishing point of the image, which is also being gestured at by that rendering of the like textured light. And they
Mhm,
give the eye a place to rest, right?
mhm,
And they create this really weird tension where you're trying to resolve how they fit into the picture.
mhm.
And because there are things you can recognize, like you can see like the back of a head and shoulders and things. Like it's clear that there are figures pointed one way, looking at a figure in the far background pointing the other way, right? The space is very legible, but it's hard to make it resolve.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting decision here, compositionally, that we have our one human figure is way in the back, kind of separated from us by the window or bars, and we are looking at this from the side of these like alien creatures. It's like we are here, we are in the void.
Well,
We are
those are
looking.
our hands in the bottom left corner, reaching
Whoa,
out with our,
whoa.
knobbly claws.
Oh, dang. Oh,
Yeah,
no. Oh, we're in trouble.
yeah.
Oh, we should never have come out
Well, the
here.
person
It's
in the background is
dangerous.
in trouble. We've got those grabby hands. Can you
Wait,
imagine having
are we?
hands?
Does this picture posits that we are evil?
Yeah, that's kind of how I take it.
Whoa, that's crazy. I
Or
don't.
just to say there's another monster back here, but he couldn't fit into the picture.
Wait, it's too big.
He's back there with the other half of the circle.
Yeah. There's some great, like, if you look in the details, there's some great, like, weird creatures in this. There's some sort of weird bug guy with kind of carapace on him, and there's like, I don't know, maybe a gorilla. The people were afraid of gorillas back in the 30s. I
People were
don't know why.
notably afraid of gorillas at the time.
Yeah, I don't know if it was for good reasons, but
You know what I think is doing a lot of work here, like
hmm,
subtly, like a supporting actor,
hmm,
is that little triangle next to the tentacle, next to the hands in the bottom left-hand corner, right? Because that also is a flat shape, but it's made out of light instead of the flat black, and there are
yeah.
things on top of it. So just like it creates, it keeps you from fully understanding the system, right? You can't make out the rules for how things get depicted or what things are.
Hmm. Yeah, there's just a lot to like here, and the way that this guy renders light, um, is, I don't know of anyone else who really approaches this. It's so good.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to the next piece? We got a bunch this time because they're really fun.
Yeah. You guys get ready for the next piece, and maybe, if your significant other's in the room, maybe turn the screen away. All right, you were
Yeah.
warned.
Or if you have, well, wow, she's so sexy.
Yeah, she's very beautiful.
She's so beautiful. You can tell that she's from like a long ago time because she doesn't look like a modern lady. She looks like
Yeah,
she's a,
different ideal of beauty.
it's true.
You were supposed to tilt your chin up. She looks like
So
well,
beautiful.
she looks like the Gibson.
So, so
That
anyway, yeah.
was the most beautiful thing you could do would be to like if you were looking, somebody pointed a bird out to you that was flying overhead.
She's great though.
Yeah.
She's got that characteristic of pinups where you can tell what sort of like undergarments they're wearing because their body still conforms to
Yeah.
it even though they're naked.
Yeah.
But uh, I don't know what's going on here. She's got double horns, so maybe she's evil.
But she also has those modesty birds. I think of birds as a good animal for some
This is
reason.
having to cover up some parts of your sexy dude or lady, a long-standing problem in art. I think
Yes.
this is one of the better solutions I've
Yes.
seen because the modesty birds, while funny, they kind of tie into what's going on compositionally, and they
Certainly.
suggest a sort of innocence that's belied by everything that's going on around here. And so it kind of takes the inherent tension in the image. Is this lady evil or is she good? And she's got some like doves or something around her, so maybe she's good, but then she's got, who knows? Could be
The
anything.
the modesty birds actually serve like a spatial role in the image too, where
Mm.
the beautiful lady's in the far background and the evil monster man is in the far foreground, and you need something in the middle or the picture will look empty, and the birds sit in that middle plane.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. What do you think is what's the best modesty object you've ever seen? Maybe this is a
Hmm,
hard question to answer offhand. I saw this movie of Beowulf once. It was not good, but in the movie, they actually did him fighting Grendel naked as he does in the poem.
that's cool.
But they did it with they just had a modesty object every time,
Like he
and
was like
he
wrenching his arm off, but there was a vase right in front of his stuff.
Yeah, but it was like a old timey, Anglo-Saxon vase, like a torch or
Yeah,
candle. He always just happened to be standing behind
yeah,
something.
that's awesome.
It was incredible.
Yeah, I love that. I do kind of like I'm a big fan of this modesty bird, and I would even like to see it in other contexts. Like you know how in movies, um, like sort of after a man and a woman get done having sex and it shows them lying in bed, and the woman's they have like a two-level sheet where the woman's sheet is pulled up over her breast and the man's sheet is just pulled up to his waist. What if you just had some birds there, right?
Yeah, some very helpful kind, like when in a Disney movie there are little animals
Yeah,
that come around. You just have these,
yeah.
the post-coital birds fly in.
They fly in and
They
just sort
fly.
of interpose themselves between the you and the camera where it counts.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
we should write Walt Disney about that.
yeah. Right as frozen head.
Yep.
Dear sir,
Dude, we have a wonderful idea for you.
for you to consider when they thaw you out.
Yep. Um, I mean, this is kind of here's the thing. This sort of aggressively sexy art.
Yeah,
Um, and like legit, like it's super sexy.
yeah,
You don't see it that much these days. I think people are actually more prudish than they once were. Uh, and I don't know. It's like I think we'll be talking about this in the future as well,
yeah,
because it's an interesting issue. But personally, I always love to see an awesome, powerful, sexy lady. She like looks like you should probably be afraid of her, actually, and I think that's
yeah,
cool. Like this is the thing that the lady is like kind of threatening is an interesting thing to see.
yeah. She's not like she is being. There's this guy doing a weird like attack or menace, but she's not like cowering. She's doing some other thing. Also, the
Hmm.
way the tentacles weave around and make a little decorative border to frame her and the birds.
Hmm.
And I also would imagine if this were a single full page and it were the left page and then the like the shadow stuff on the right hand side gets into the fold of the magazine, I think this could like then suddenly she becomes framed centered,
Hmm.
right?
Maybe. Hard to say.
Hard to say.
Well, the other thing that I think we should mention is the way that the forms are handled. That in the lady is stippled. So like all the shadows on her body are made by doing tiny little dots with your pen or whatever. A very labor intensive way to work, but one that can give you really, really fine, detailed
Yeah, like
lighting effects.
if you look at her stomach, it's the gradation is like almost painterly.
Yeah. Where, in contrast to the menacing person up above, who is handled in a completely different way, he looks like
Yeah.
he's made out of different material than she is. And
Yes.
it's such a cool contrast. Like the light is just totally different on
Hmm.
him. Really great. Really crazy looking face on that guy. The other thing I think is interesting about this is that all of these tentacle shapes are there's not it doesn't look like they belong to an octopus or
Yeah.
anything. There's no even hint of sort of like actual anatomy on them. They're just curvy lines,
Yep.
which makes them extremely otherworldly and very very threatening. I also think it's interesting to look at, like, I mean, this that we've been doing tentacles since forever. Like, people have been into this from since a million years
Mm.
ago. This is just something that humans are into. It's
Yeah.
not a modern invention. Uh, anyway, wow, what a piece of work this is, huh?
Yep.
Well,
Yeah. Well, and we've got one more for you, and I think I adore this. I think this is so splendid.
I think this is one of the great works of art. It's very, very good.
We've talked in some of the earlier episodes about the role of art, like what art is supposed to do for the thing it's illustrating, and that some of the previous art, like the Dinotopia art, is more about giving you a sense of the moment or being descriptive of the setting rather than being descriptive of a single moment. But this art, and I think any of these stories where there's like a big twist at the end, all of these illustrations are illustrations of a specific moment that's happening. And this one in particular, I imagine as being like I took off the lid of the box with trembling fingers, and reader there staring back at me was a big eye,
Yeah.
you know?
Here's what wows me. Uh-oh, the heater's coming. We got it. Hang on, you guys. We're gonna pause just for a second. Oh gosh, we have. Oh, we're back. All
We're
right.
back.
Phew.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. What I was going to say is, like, so what really wows me about this image is, imagine that you are a talented illustrator and you get a short story, and in the short story there's a scene where, like, a man finds a box in a river or a puddle or something at night. He opens it up. There's an eyeball in it. It's terrifying. What's your first idea about how to stage this? Like,
Yeah.
off the top of your head, you think, oh, maybe there's a creepy tree. You see the whole body of the man. He's bending over the river.
Yeah.
There's some. This is not a first idea of how to stage this. This took the think figuring out, like, oh, we center the box. So it's
Yeah.
that as if you, the viewer, are having the same terrifying experience as the man in the story does. But you want to see the man's face also. So we put his reflection in the water so you can see his terrified glance at the same time. Um, that's wild. That's
Yeah.
so crazy.
And I think that like if you put an eye staring at the viewer into your image, there are a handful of sneaky eyes in some of the earlier illustrations too. But if you put just a staring eye staring at you, that's like putting that's like a black hole in your image that vacuums up the attention of the viewer. And so for this one to say there is one main eye, which is the point of the illustration, and then there are some sneaky eyes that are also staring up at you in a like consternated way.
Hmm. Yeah, incredible. And, like, not to mention just amazing way that the reflected face with the light in the water has been rendered so that it's totally readable at first glance.
Hmm.
You can tell that you're looking at a reflection in the water, and this is done not with, you know, shading with watercolors. It's done entirely with line work,
Yeah,
which is just a whole nother mode of thought that you have to get into to make an image like this work. Uh, that's incredible. That's just like knowing that you have the skills to do something like that and make it work is, I'm very jealous of that. The
yeah.
other thing that I think is remarkable about this is look at the tree shape up there. Just white lines.
To be
Where
able
is it even
to,
coming from? It doesn't matter. It's just good.
like, if you look at the way that the water pools and becomes more reflective near the box because it's like eddying and that reads to you as motion, and the virtuosic control you have to do that, and then to have a reflection in the water, and then to say, like, well, yeah, but when I do the tree, the point isn't to have this be as uh, the point isn't for me to do a treatment of the texture of bark. The point is, how is this going to serve my image? And in this case, I'm going to serve the image similar actually to the circles and triangles from before, like as a really stark visual
Hmm.
on top of everything else that gives a really strong counterpoint to the texture and depth and gradation uh, lower in the image.
Yeah, as always, uh, the stuff that you leave out, the parts that you don't draw, are some of the most important parts of the drawing. Or I don't know, it's just knowing that you can just have that be white shapes
Yeah.
is, that's part of what really, really makes this incredible, I think.
As a little exercise for the viewer, if you pop back through the previous images and just look at where there are empty whites and where there are flat blacks, it's pretty stunning.
Yeah, this guy is good at what he does. And yeah, look up his stuff. Like, I kind of picked all of these images mostly at random because every single one I saw was incredible. He's a good artist to take a look at. I love this old horror stuff. It's so
Yeah.
much fun.
Yeah. Really a like rich tradition of illustration that is there are collections of like, bound collections of Virgil Finlay's work. But really easy to lose track of some of these people who are doing such incredible um, work in a pulp medium.
Yeah, that like some of the most beautiful drawing work that was done for some of the world's cheapest and sleaziest magazines.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. Um,
Like maybe this story is good, but maybe this story sucks,
it might be terrible.
It could be.
If you find out, let us know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, do you have anything more you want to say about this one, Abelard?
No, that's all from me.
That's all for me too. But hey guys, if you wanna like if there's an artist that you'd like us to talk about, feel free to let us know. You can
Oh,
like
that's a good point.
leave a comment or whatever.
Yeah.
It's cool. Uh and do you want to do the sign off or should I do
Oh, yeah. Our sign off is until next time, keep on dreaming.
it? Bye guys.
Bye, everybody.
Wow, that was fun.
I think that went pretty well.
I think it went great.